We truly, truly, truly want you as societies, as associations, as leaders, as AEs, as presidents, as incoming presidents, to have a better, more relevant, more applicable, more appropriate, more cool association next year and the year after than you will most likely have if you do nothing.
This is not going to be an easy task. This is going to require dedication. It's going to require more of your time than probably you've given to any other single task over the next 2 years. And so the leadership, the staff, I can say to you, it's kind of part of your job. But the leadership, I want to take my hat off, and to all of you for the dedication, for being here, for taking the time, and for going on this journey with us. Associations in all industry are finding themselves in a bit of trouble. The American Medical Association is now down to 30% of the physicians, only 30% of the physicians are in fact part of the AMA. So all associations, not just you, old venerable organizations. We have associations this year that are going to celebrate their 100th year. And it is in that 100th year that they're looking back, and when they look back at the association, it was vital, it really had purpose, it really had meaning. But right now, if you took away most of the things you do, the members really wouldn't miss them for the most part. And that's very sad, that's very important that we revitalize and we recapture the members and the members' attention. And so the Pinnacle Group effort is to assist Realtor Associations in gaining a new vitality through revitalization of their roles and become invaluable to the members.
So what you have to do is you have to take as much data as you currently have, you project the data, you look for the intersections, you look for the intersections to spark on each other, and then you go, okay, based on what we're seeing now, this is a reasonably logical result. When it's done, we may have 40 different visions in this room, because one of the things that we have committed from the beginning is this is not about being a cookie cutter. This is about being relevant to your marketplace, unique to your marketplace, and we're teaching you we want you to understand how to draw from that information where you need to be.
I think, Jeremy thinks, Jim thinks, that we as an association have a right, an obligation, a desire, a need to take that center spot. In most cases, you will find that it's either, and this is no particular order, it's one of the franchises. No, don't worry if I didn't put your franchise up there. That's not the point, right? But in most cases, it seems to be one of those three. They tend to pop up more frequently than the ones which I did not mention. Media sites, which means it's owned by some publication, newspaper, TV kind of conglomerate if you go back up the chain, right? And they're not that much different from maybe the newspapers which controlled some of the market before, right? So they're not strangers. They look now very .com-ish, but they're not different. We have internet companies. Well, you know, do they really have sites, or are they just aggregators, or are they search engines? I'm not sure. They change their color also from time to time, and you know, MSN and Google and AOL. But they're there. They frequently pop up, especially Yahoo. And I would never expect a local real estate company to pop up on a national search. I get that. But even local real estate companies very frequently don't make the top page. And again, whichever statistic you look at, we do know that if you're not number one or number two, if you're not on the top page, you're probably not getting the love and the kind and the attention which you would want, right? So creating a consumer-facing website, which is only one strategy, I'll discuss another 2 or 3 in a moment. We'll get to that. That's not the only one we're talking about. But if we discuss grabbing that center position in your state, your town, your region, your city, wherever you want to draw the lines, it doesn't make a difference because the web is wide. I think it's a great strategy for you to help your members survive. At the same time, I think it's a great strategy for you to become more relevant. So the two actually weave together. While you're doing good for your members, you're actually saving your ass. So it's great. It works. It really dovetails together. Because if you create a portal or a site or a place or information or a go-to or whatever, which becomes dominant, lots of traffic, good information, people, feet, eyeballs, the feed, what doesn't matter what it is, right? Because I understand that we all have different opinions about it. Not if we all built a consumer-facing website tomorrow, it wouldn't all look the same. Some of us would say, no, you can't do listings. Some would say, why not? Some would say, I would put all this information on. The other one would say, no. The other one says, let's have it on our information. The other one says, let's just do only a link. I could argue with you on all of those individual points, but collectively, it is hard to argue that you shouldn't have a place which people could go to. And once we have it, we can build it, expand it, grow it. I would like to type in any state name or any town name and then real estate behind it or houses for sale and have your association come up. I mean, coolest would be first, but if you could just get into the first 3 or above the fold or the top 10, that's way better than the sucky 100th position which you have now or 0 position which you have now. Being the leading portal in my town, in my city, in my state, being the leading provider of information, being the source of information, statistics, trends, listings, houses, school, it doesn't matter what it is, being the go-to place for that, damn, that makes you relevant. Don't give it to somebody else. So if you said to a real estate company or a real estate agent in your area and or state or town, would you like additional traffic? Which level-headed person would say no? Would you like if I gave you 5 or 10 or 20 or 30 extra leads per month at no charge? And we had to think about a D. Where's a D going to be in the next 2 or 3 or 4 years? Now, we know this changed the whole time. Some think that the change is imminent, we can't stop it. Some think the change is going to happen very quickly. Some of us agree that it's happening, but it's maybe a little bit slower. But let's say 3 years from now, 2015, 2016, we think D associations today will either have been merged into another organization, right? So I mean that they'll be the lesser one, or they'll probably be on the verge of collapse. They'll be, it's not going to be pretty, right? They might still be around. We don't think associations are just going to close all their doors overnight, but you've done a few things and you've changed and you've become more relevant in the eyes of the members. You've transformed your organization from where you are today. And again, transformation is an ongoing process, but somewhere else. You're most likely, you've either scaled down your white ivory tower so that you can break even with your budget, if your members have gone down, or you've introduced new initiatives that make money on the side. Minneapolis is a good example, right, where you can earn money from another side, which has made you self-sufficient, but you actually have purpose now. B. A. Man, you're just the coolest thing in town, right? I mean, there's nobody that even comes close to you.
So how do you lead?
I lead in facilitating. The members of the World Trade Organization, these 153 countries, have entrusted me with some authority.
So as you listen to this man who runs the World Trade Organization, who has 150, his board is 150 countries, he's describing his sense of what he has at his control, what control he has. And so that's the first step of any time we talk about this, is to recognize that none of us are as powerful as what we think we are, and it's fun to have him describe his power. The purpose of a business model is to create value. It's a value creation machine. And so when you create a new business model, you're going to decide, well, who's it going to create value for? And when you look at a legacy business model, you want to look at, say, well, who's it creating value for? Well, our current brokerage business model isn't making any money for its owners. At best, it may pay them a decent wage, but it's certainly not creating a return on investment, which is another job of the business model. It's not making consumers very happy. There's just adequate evidence that they're not really into the current brokerage business model or how it reflects in a transaction. And again, the agents are not exactly clear that it's doing well for them. So at the current time, the traditional brokerage business model, which is in its final era, really isn't taking care of anybody. It's just sort of floating along, and we're waiting for these events to happen. So there will be a new brokerage business model, and it'll be focused on some very, very significant things. The difference between the Y and the Boomer is just night and day. And so you'll see in everything that you do, including having them as members, having them as agents, having them as bosses, that it's a huge shift. And that's going to make a huge difference. Okay, so in this new environment where we have a new brokerage owner, a new brokerage operator, and a new brokerage investor who sets up a system which is focused on return on investment, who sets up a transaction which is totally focused on making consumers happy and meeting their needs. So in that whole new world that we're talking about, what role is the trade association probably going to play in that moving forward?
120 leaders, 40 associations, 6 modules, 2 years, 1 shared vision to make Realtor Associations more relevant. That is the Pinnacle program, addressing concerns and changes, re-engineering the existing and the tired, working individually but thinking collectively. There is not, to the best of my knowledge, really a brain trust group for association leaders. So part of this was, how can we take a group of associations that are not necessarily the best or the biggest, although those are 2 nice criteria, but an important criteria, willing and able and want to change. If you don't agree that the future is coming, if you don't agree with all of the changes, and we are going to make you, I think in the annual which we're going to give you, there's 5 recommendations how we think we can address this module. And as Jim said, there's 5 more modules, 6 in total, and we'll have 4 or 5 recommendations in each module. I would be very surprised if any association implemented all 5 over all 6 modules. So it's probably not going to happen. But the 5 we've selected are based on hundreds of hours of consulting with associations. We added up that between Jim, Jeremy, and myself, we have personally visited over 500 associations in the country. That's a bucket load of associations.
To me, the question from association relevance is, look at it without MLS. Take the MLS question off the table. Is the association, is a local or even a state association relevant, regardless of that, to our members? And if you take MLS out of the equation and just say, will my members join my organization for the services I provide, regardless of MLS? To me, that's the question we have to solve. And that's a big challenge in this changing market. And I think you add MLS to it, it makes it a much more confusing question.
It's a real struggle to try to pick and choose what we're going to do. We help the very small broker who can't provide these services, but we hurt the bigger broker that's using it as a competitive edge.
I think that looking at the travel agents industry, that we need to be looking at taking it down from 40 or 60 to 30, 20.
About 60%, but if we stay the same and deliver the same, it's not going to be that 60%. It'll be in the 40 to 50%.
So how we are engaged in this question is really very different. We're not budgeting to make the MLS more relevant. We're not engaging in their business as they try to take on this threat. What we're looking at is, how do we detour the decision to become a member of the association, not the MLS? Because if you look at our survey, we had 78% of our members said they joined the association because their broker makes them, or to get access to the MLS. So we're not out there trying to make ourselves relevant to Zillow. We're trying to make ourselves relevant to the agent regardless of where they go. It's up to the MLS at this point for them to tackle this issue. And if they want to engage us in the battle, then we have to see something in it for the association as well. So we're not looking at trying to battle this specific issue, as we are saying, if our agent decides that Zillow's their portal of choice, how does the association be engaged in that decision?
Thank you very much. You just stated exactly what I was going to do. I think there are state associations and locals who are part of either an independent or a broker-owned or a regional MLS where, again, we don't have that direct relationship in terms of making a change to the Zillows or being more of a presence. I wish we could be all like Mr. Hale, God bless you, but and have that kind of presence in their community. We don't necessarily get that opportunity. We're not necessarily the decision makers who can move that and affect this. And again, your point is correct.
I think one solution to that is the associations and MLS all get together and have a meeting with their brokers and explain to them, we can keep losing the battle or we can change directions, but it's got to be together. Because Chicago can't do it by themselves. MRED won't do it. It's got to be all of them working together because that broker's got to understand they're losing ground by the minute. And until they get educated, they're just going to keep jumping off the cliff.
Well, I mean, our leadership recognizes that the consumer is extremely powerful in dictating where real estate is going. And we felt like we understood our members, but we didn't feel like we had a lot of local knowledge about the consumer. There's national data out there about trends and attitudes and preferences, but we really wanted to drill down and understand our market area, which is the Houston home buyer and home seller. You know, it's interesting because in the beginning, it was a little pricey, but after what I know now, it has become substantially cheaper in the year 2. The first year, we worked with a different survey tool company. We thought we needed like a 500-pound gorilla for the survey software, and it turns out that we only need a tool that costs about $2,800 a year. We use a survey tool called Cvent, and it's very intuitive. Anybody can understand it. Just a few keystrokes and you can send out a survey very, very quickly. It's really a nimble tool.
So you get a lot of information. So,
a lot.
So one, you're building a relationship. Now these are people who have agreed to interact with you.
Yes.
Now, so let's start. So that's your panel. So at this point, 18 months into it, how many people do you have on your panel?
We have over 5,500 people.
Okay.
Consumers.
So 5,500 people who have agreed that they'll interact with you several times a year.
That's right.
You send us a questionnaire, we'll give you the information.
That's right.
So not only do you have that relationship, but you're producing some incredibly important information. So what do you do with this information? It just goes in a drawer somewhere? Or?
Oh, no. We have a portal on our website that is accessible to the members. It's one of the tools. So every survey report is published on our website, so the consumers, so the Realtor members can see it continuously. You know, we start with a report, a summary, some recommendations. We make a presentation to our board of directors, and in some cases, we may actually publish it to outside sources. For example, the Legislative Priorities Survey. We have just sent out a press release on the responses to that. We received over 1,000 responses.
We gave Jim the task to review all of your websites and to look at all of the websites. So I started putting down some questions based on our discussion early on today. So I jotted down on my iPad during the course of today in the groups about a half a dozen to a dozen questions, which I'm going to go through, and we're going to ask Jim, based on the fact that he looked at all of your websites, and that it was the task to see if we could learn something from, is a consumer-facing website good or bad? So I try to put them in some kind of a logical order as I typed them up here. First one is, where does an association even start to create a consumer-facing website? You have these 6 Ps or 5 Ps or something. So take us through the steps. If I was interested to do a website, where do I start?
Number one is you have to lay down the plan, but the next most important thing is you have to do a presentation to the board, to the powers in your marketplace to get permission to do it. There's no reason to do anything until you get there. So that's the first part. The next part would be, and all the P's, but you really have to understand what it is you're trying to accomplish. One of the little videos a lady talked about, know what you want to do and know where you want to get to. I think it's very important to try to scope out how big of an undertaking you want to take on, and fundamentally, if you can define it, then you can sell it, and then you can do it. But that's the steps you're going to have to go through.
Now we've all created some website of some kind, and there's always a disagreement about what we could or couldn't do. What do you think is a must-have? If I created a consumer-facing website, what should I absolutely have to do?
I believe that if you look at page 75.
Oh, we have that down in the book too.
We have it in the book.
All right, so that's
right?
in the book too.
So I would tell you, out of those things there, absolute musts. Map-based search and multiple property reflected. Ability to modify the search criteria without leaving the result. Property maps, bird's eye view map, listing property history, neighborhood demographic, open house search, school performance data, and ability to email the listings. One that's implied there that I didn't write down was find an agent, right? But those are the ones that I think that if you're going to have a website and that's kind of a minimum website to have something acceptable to the consumer that the consumer would come back to.
This has never been done before in Realtor history. A dynamic, industry-changing program with new materials created every 90 days as the program evolves. A collective group of association leaders brainstorming together, addressing the unknown and sharing the best of their best so that we can do whatever needs to be done to once again become relevant.
I thought it was a very innovative program.
Well, it was everything I thought it was going to be, number one. It reinforced a few things, that we have more work to do, that we actually are on the right track, and that we have been making progress. So it was both reassuring and it was enlightening.
Mind-boggling.
It's right on track with where we want to be.
The pace of change is so much faster than what a lot of us think about, and that the players that are in the market are so much larger than what associations are themselves, and the associations are going to have to find new ways to do things. Otherwise, just the sheer dollars that they have to throw at a problem are going to overwhelm them.
It has been eye-opening and challenging to some of the mores that we think are the way we do business. Well, we have to do business differently if we're going to thrive in the next 5 years.